Hello. I wanted to talk about my work with the tarot and conceptual blending and seeing the tarot as a creative thinking technique, and that's why it works. And that's what I've been writing about for a good 10 years now. And I noticed we had our monthly Zoom meeting yesterday. And a lot of people there were talking about my work and how using the tarot as a conceptual blending tool, which is what I say the tarot reading is. Conceptual blending is a creative thinking technique known today. And they were saying that you can use the tarot as conceptual blending, or you could use the tarot in a different way, intuitive or something like that. And like there was two different systems. What I'm trying to say to people is you cannot do a tarot reading unless you are doing what is commonly known today as conceptual blending. The tarot can now be seen as a creative thinking technique known as conceptual blending. And it was never understood before. Now it is. And this opens up so many doors of understanding and capability now with the cards in ways that we've never had ever in the tarot's history. So now the tarot can be explained. I have some books here on what other authors have said. This is Attila. The only true way to draw the cards. This was written in 1770. And in here he writes talking about how to use cards for readings. He writes, there is undoubtedly something there. That is all I can say here. And this something is as difficult to discover as would be to find a needle in a heap of hay. So he can't explain what it is, but he says there's something to this because it works. That's 1770. John Baptiste Alliette. Attila was his pen name. First professional tarot reader we have on record. France. 100 years later, Dr. Encausse, pen name of Pappas, wrote Tarot of the Bohemians. And in here he writes, the key to its construction and application have not yet been revealed so far as I know. Again, saying we can't explain why it works. Eden Gray, 1970, 200 years after Alliette wrote The Complete Guide to the Tarot, 1970. Eden Gray writes in there, for some reason that we don't understand, the cards seem to shuffle themselves. So again, saying we don't know why this works. Fred Gettings, Tarot, How to Read the Future. And in here he writes, although the tarot method works, it must be admitted from the outset that no one has been able to explain how it works. So that's where we've been with this for centuries. My work on the tarot stands alone as being the one and only who can now answer that question. I go into depth in this with my books, The Essential Tarot, Unlocking the Mystery, using the Rider-Waite deck, and Bare Bones Tarot, an in-depth study to key elements of the tarot, my latest book. In this book, I use my Tarot Marseille deck. But if you understand why it works, then you realize that the deck is secondary. Whatever deck you want to use, and my books can be understood and read clearly, whatever deck you use. Doesn't make any difference. But it does work. And actually, the system that's in place with a tarot reading today is widely known, and it has been it became official 30 years ago in 1993 in the field of psychology. But it's widely used, and it's used in huge projects. And actually, it's used better than the tarot reader's application. The tarot reader's application is pretty primitive to what they're doing today, because a tarot reader just uses a deck of tarot cards, and they limit themselves to that. And that's fine, really. For what we use them for what we use it for, that works out fine. And that's all there is to it. But it can't be stressed enough. If you understand, the tarot has never been able to progress because we never understood why it worked. These leading authors here say so in their work. I'm sure there's other sources out there that say basically the same thing, that we don't know why. My work shows we do know why. My work is the only work out there that shows that. But when you see it, you can't deny it. Today, if you were to show the tarot reading, if you were to show the tarot reading to a creative consultant or somebody else that's familiar with this type of work, they would look at it and say, well, yeah, that's what you're doing. Anytime you're taking some random subject and you're adding it to elements of your question, the way we take a random tarot card and add it to elements of our question known as card spread positions, that today is defined and understood totally in psychology, and it's labeled conceptual blending. So now, for the first time in our history of the tarot, we can say we understand why this works. It has value, and it's just the way the mind naturally works anyway, so it's really nothing to understand or learn other than that's what we're doing, because that's just the way the mind works, which is why we were doing it centuries ago. We just didn't realize what we were doing. Today, we have intentional applications in place that spark this, and those intentional applications in place mimic the tarot reading. They do exactly what the tarot reading does. So like I said, the good news is the mind tends to do this anyway. The best way to shake up an old pattern of thinking is to throw in some new, seemingly unrelated element into the question, like the spine cone. The mind will work overtime to fit it in there somehow, to find patterns or some type between your question and the random stimulus that you've added to it. Power of randomness is it forces the mind, when added to the question, it forces the mind to make an association, a connection between your question and the randomness that was added to it. Now, people will say, well, how about intuition and psychic awareness and things like this? Because this will come up in a tarot reading. We're using the same part of the mind that also sparks our intuition, our psychic awareness. The right brain thinking does this. That's where that's all at. And you ask any creative consultant who would understand creative thinking techniques and who would definitely understand conceptual blending, you ask them if they believe in intuition, and I'm sure all of them will say, yeah, oh yeah, it's there. And it has value because they've used that part of the mind. They're not saying it's unexplainable. They're saying it's there. We might not know a lot about it, but it has value. Anyway, this opens up a lot of doors. If you understand why something works, when you're trying to learn it, it makes it so much easier to learn. And that's always been the curveball with the tarot. Nobody's been able to explain why it works. I claim to now can explain why this works. And my work is a first. And it's in my books. Radical Tarot, Breaking All the Rules, also goes into it. But this is a smaller book. The tarot can now be explained. And that opens up so much as far as clarity of what we're doing and really being able to verify with conclusive thinking, facts, why this works. Understanding why something works when you're trying to learn it makes it so much clearer. And understanding why something works also allows us to improve it. We haven't been able to improve the tarot. We're using the same thinking, same techniques as we did centuries ago. Now, understanding why it works allows us to do that. That's powerful. So look at the creative thinking techniques, look at the conceptual blending, understand it, or read my books, and you'll see it work with the tarot that way. Adding any type of random stimulus to our question, something that has nothing to do with our question, forces us to use our imagination, the right side of the mind, right brain thinking, which is also where our intuition comes from. So if we're using that side of the mind, yeah, intuitive things are going to come into our mind as well. So now for the first time in the history of the tarot, we could answer that question that Aliette, Pappas, Ian Gray, Fred Gettings, and all the other masters who were out there. We could finally answer that question, why it works. My sources are the only source about it out there right now. When you see it, it makes perfect sense. You cannot do a tarot reading without using what today is known as conceptual blending. And actually, creative consultants and creative thinking techniques have actually taken the whole application and brought it up to a scale that's so high right now. It's used in medicine, science, technology, artificial intelligence. Major corporations use it. Think tanks looking into huge projects would use it. And it's exactly the same thing we're doing with a deck of cards. So now we understand it. What do you think of that? Keep throwing cards. We'll talk soon.